All right, guys. Hello once again, and welcome to the VT Roundtable. I'm your host, Brett Anderson. I'm joined by, I had three of my favorite people, but Sean just bailed on us. So I have two of my favorite people here. We got Austin Bilal. Austin, say hello. And we have, of course, Sam Newman down there on the bottom left. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Brett. Hello, world.
Hello. Thank you for joining this evening. So, as you guys know, the Vikings, they held their season finale this past Sunday against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Much like the Vikings, we are having our own season finale tonight on the Roundtable. And it's a doozy. It's going to be full of surprises. We have some celebrity cameos lined up and some crazy twists. I think, spoiler alert, Sam, you like reveal yourself as actually being on Team Teddy this entire time at the end of the episode or something like that.
You gave it away, but that was the plan.
That's okay. You know what? It's okay. No, but seriously, we have a lot to talk about tonight, and then we're going to be taking a little hiatus on the show where we kind of regroup, refocus, and come back better than ever. So we're going to start off talking about the glorious loss to the Eagles. We're not going to spend a ton of time there because why, I guess, spend a ton of time talking about that? Let's look forward to more positive, more optimistic things on the horizon for this team. We're going to be talking about, where do the Vikings go from here? How do they get better? Who's going to be the new offensive coordinator? Who's going to be the new quarterback next season? So we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. Let's jump right in, kind of recapping, I guess, the Eagles game. Not getting into too much depth, but I'm more interested basically in just what your guys' reactions were. Austin, I kind of already know what your reaction was, so I guess Sam, I'll start with you since you're the only person I don't really know how you reacted to the game yet. So what was your reaction, man, this past Sunday?
Hard to put it into words exactly. I would say when the game was happening, I would just say confusion and disbelief. There were ways that I could see the Vikings getting beat in that game. I'm sure there were ways we could all see them losing to the Eagles. Didn't think in a million years it would be that way. Just getting absolutely torched on defense. Nick Foles looking like a Hall of Famer and shredding that defense, which had been so good for the vast majority of the year. So I was sort of shocked. I think emotionally it was a little easier than last second loss. I always do that debate. Would you rather get blown out or would you rather have a last second loss, sort of like a walk-off loss? And I think I'd rather get blown out just because by the second half you already know what's going on and you're able to accept it gradually rather than that one hammer dropping all at the same time.
So did it even ruin your night? I guess that's kind of a stupid question, or maybe not though, because Austin and I were together for the game. And I don't even really feel like it even ruined my night just because of the manner in which they lost. I think kind of like, what you were just speaking to, it wasn't a heart-wrenching loss because it wasn't like we even had a chance really at any point in the game other than, the first quarter. So, I don't know. Were you even upset about it the rest of the night? I guess I'm just wondering, like, did it hit you as hard as some of these other losses have hit us in the past?
Yeah, no, I remember specifically it wasn't as bad. It didn't hit as hard as the Blair Walsh miss in 2015, in which I whined to my wife and made her take me to go get barbecue to ease my pain. No, this one was just easier. I sat down. We were just at a friend's house across the street. I sat down, came home, sat down, and wrote the kind of my last little post-game wrap-up of the season, and that's always a cathartic process. So I think that helped in just trying to sort it all out that way. But no, it wasn't. I wasn't depressed. I felt it more the next morning. I don't know why.
I really love, I'm looking at the chat right now. This cracked me up. Don, our buddy, as soon as we started the video, he said the Eagles just scored again, which basically summarizes that game pretty well. Austin, I was there with you during the game, so I kind of already know how your reaction, but like, I don't know. Yeah. Why were we so calm about this game? Like, why were you so calm about it?
I think that's a good question. I don't really know why I was so calm. I guess because as soon as the Eagles started to score and you knew the game was over, what else could you really hope for? You kind of came to terms with the outcome as the game went on. Like, at first, the Vikings go down the field, score a touchdown, force a 3-and-out from the Eagles. There was some hope. And then Keenum throws that interception. They drive right down the field again. and you kind of just you say, that's it, right? I mean, like Sam said, it's a lot better than if this was some kind of defensive struggle and Forbath missed a field goal or Keenum threw an interception to end the game and we lost, right? Like it wasn't heartbreaking. It was more just disappointing, and that I can live with.
Do you think it's just because we've now experienced this so many times that we're just kind of numb to this sort of thing, and that we had just mentally prepared ourselves for it prior?
I don't know. I mean, I try and stay away from the whole woe is me attitude of, oh, I'm a Vikings fan. This always happens because it's like the whole stat is what the Vikings have won more playoff games than any other team that hasn't won a Super Bowl. And I know that's kind of a crap stat, but the Vikings have been a relatively successful franchise. It's just they've also seen probably the most heartbreak in the playoffs in that same time span. So I don't know if we're necessarily numb to it, but, you know, the season's long, the season's exhausting, and when it finally ends, there's almost a sense of relief. And I told you after the game, Brett, I said, hey, at least we don't got to watch them lose to the Patriots in the Super Bowl, because you know what? Maybe they weren't ready. Maybe we convinced ourselves like at the end of the season when they beat the Saints that this is the team's year, when really there were glaring holes we should have noticed before the Eagles game.
But do you really think there were glaring holes? Because this is a question that's later down on my list, but I'll go ahead and bring it up now, because I feel like this may have been our best shot at winning it all. And now that we didn't, you know, I don't want to go, you know, too pessimistic on it, but if this was our best shot, if all the stars were aligning for us this season, which it kind of feels like they were, you know, was that our chance and we blew it? And what do we have to look forward to now? Or do you not see it that way, Sam?
First of all, what Austin just said, that's either an incredibly mature, measured way of looking at this season or the most depressing thing I've ever heard in my life. At least we don't have to watch them lose to the Patriots.
Yeah, he said that on Sunday. I almost punched him.
Well, and I would be lying to you if I didn't have some of the same thoughts. It's just like
that's
when we talk about...
That's because your wife is a Patriots fan.
Well, there's that too. Holy God. Which, weirdly, the Eagles fans, by the way, have done almost the impossible. They may have made me cheer for the Patriots.
I'm cheering for the Patriots. Go Patriots.
Yeah, man. I wish them the worst. Yeah, Philadelphia. Holy crap, they've been... I don't remember what your question was. Sorry, but I don't think this was our best chance to win it. I think when you look at the roster and the players coming back, I think the majority of the nucleus, who happens to be very talented, by the way, is returning, and a lot of them should be locked up for a long time. They got to figure out the quarterback thing. I'm confident they can. There are a lot of different options I'm sure we'll talk about. No, I don't think this was the best chance. I think it was an incredible run and a pretty good team that overachieved a little bit with a backup quarterback.
Where does this rank for you guys amongst historic Vikings losses? Is it towards the bottom, or would you put it above some of the other ones that we've experienced? I mean, I'm 41 donut, wide left, 09 Saints. Is it at the bottom of that list, or would you put it above any of those? Austin?
I wouldn't put it above 2015. I wouldn't put it above 1998. I wouldn't put it above 2009. I don't really remember 41-0. I remember watching it and being upset, but it was a lot like this. Like, as soon as the team goes down enough, you really can't be upset about it because it is what it is. And I had a point. I just forgot. So, Sam, you can talk. I'm really not that upset by it.
That's okay.
No, I kind of agree. I would even put this beneath that Josh McCown Arizona Cardinals one, where they knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs. That for me was a kill. I think it was where I was in my life. I mean, that just I think I went outside and stood in the cold for 20 minutes and just tried to process it. But no, I agree. I mean, it felt like a 41 donut game, and I think in the future when we look back at this game, we'll say the same things where it's like, I remember it, but I don't remember it that much. It just sort of sucked. And that type of thing. I think juxtaposed with all those emotional highs the week before, this one just feels a little underwhelming.
Yeah, it's funny. I was doing the graphic for tonight's show, and last week we had Stunned with this really cool picture of Stephon Diggs, after the Minneapolis Miracle. And I was thinking I could probably just leave the same word up there and change the picture and re-upload it for this week.
Absolutely.
I think
just because I think everyone was a little stunned at what happened Sunday. I guess not as stunned, because it was like we've been saying, just a slow, hit over the head repeatedly throughout that game. We just to watch us get pounded like that. But I think you could probably agree that everyone was a little stunned by the way the Vikings were handled by Nick Foles. So go ahead, Austin.
I remember my point, and it was kind of back to Sam's point earlier that, the stars seem to align for the season. And I'm guilty of this. I like to romanticize football and romanticize sports and say, this was the year, playing in your home stadium, everything that happened, all the adversity that they overcame. But when you get down to it, that's just I think that's just a storyline that we create in our head. Like, maybe the team wasn't ready. Maybe losing your starting left guard and your starting center, reshuffling the offensive line, not having enough pieces in the secondary. Like, there's things that I think that we overlooked, that when we got to this game, we weren't necessarily, the Vikings weren't necessarily on the same level as the Eagles in terms of depth, in terms of D-line rotations, in terms of all this different stuff. And that's just hindsight. Hindsight's 2020. Brett's shaking his head. Why?
I feel like this was the year that everything happened the way it was supposed to happen for the Vikings. You couldn't have asked, outside of like Bradford and Cook, obviously, but I feel like we always kind of overblow that.
Come on, dude.
Well, I just mean because it happened so early in the season that it didn't.
I understand, but still, which team has won a Super Bowl by losing their starting quarterback? Anytime in the season.
That's fair. But I'm just saying, if you remove those two things from the picture, I feel like everything else about this season lined itself up perfectly. I mean, you look across the rest of the NFL and the huge injuries teams were taking left and right mid-season that basically torpedoed their chances at doing well. We're probably not going to have another year where Aaron Rodgers, has the sort of injury he had this year. And we easily win the NFC North. There was just a lot of stuff around the NFL happening that put the Vikings in a really good spot. Carson Wentz going down. Can you imagine if Carson Wentz was in that game?
Could it have been much worse? Really.
He could have been much better.
But
he couldn't have played much better.
No, that's true. What else is he going to do? Nick Foles hit every throw.
Yeah. It wouldn't have been any different. Guaranteed.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I hear what you're saying, though, Brett. You're right. Like in 2016, when everything went the opposite of the Vikings' way, a lot of things injury-wise, the offensive line staying together for the most part, everybody on defense staying healthy. That went their way.
And that's what I mean. Like, we talk about the Bradford and Cook injury, but on the opposite side of that, we were very lucky with injuries this season outside of those two injuries.
Outside of those two, which are very important.
I know, but we did not suffer major injuries the rest of the season.
No, and you're right about
on defense.
You're right, and Rodgers isn't going to get hurt every year. Guess what? You go beat them then. This team's pretty freaking good, and they're going to keep being good.
But I think you put all of that together with the fact that the Super Bowl was in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And then I just feel like, this was our shot, and I'm just not sure how we overcome this in the future and how we can better prepare ourselves to not find ourselves in this situation again where we lose in the NFC Championship or we lose in the last second in the Super Bowl, so I don't know. I see a hectic life in the chat. Who is to blame? So I was going to ask you guys that before we move on from this depressing Philly game. Who, if you guys had to pick one person, I guess, is responsible for this loss? I know we can say, and it's true, that the entire team was awful. Harrison Smith even had probably the worst game of his career, was missing tackles he makes every Sunday. I know you can probably say that pretty much across the board. But if you guys are putting this loss on the shoulders of one person, who is it? Sam?
Mike Zimmer.
Okay. And why?
When a team is so woefully underprepared for any game, much less a big game like that, as it was clear the Vikings were on Sunday, at some point that comes back on the head coach. I don't know why. I don't know, specifically what he did or didn't do, but the team was not prepared for that game, and that falls on the head coach.
Okay. Austin?
I kind of wanted to go with an out-of-the-box answer here, but it's probably a bad idea. I don't want to necessarily point the finger totally at Zimmer. I think a lot of the blame falls on the players themselves. I'm sure that Diggs is catch and the Minneapolis Miracle had something to do with this letdown of a game. I don't really know.
Diggs. You're blaming Stephon Diggs for that insane catch the week before.
I was actually going to say it's the safety. What's his name? Marcus Williams.
Yeah.
I blame him for missing that tackle. If we could have just won that game with like a walk-off field goal, it would have been a whole different game.
True.
So I'm just kidding.
I feel like I said it during, when we did that post-game show right after the Saints game, Sam. Is this going to be a thing that propels the Vikings to a championship, or is this going to be something where the team put everything they had into beating New Orleans, and that was the pinnacle of this season? That was the peak, and that they weren't going to, surpass that. They weren't going to overcome it. And I think we saw that. I mean, I was listening to your show, Sam, the Minnesota Sports Section show.
Thank you.
And you guys, so I'm like citing your show, which cited something else, but you guys cited a tweet. I'm not sure who it was, but basically Schefter. That, it was Shefty. Of course it was Shefty. What did he say? It was something like, teams that had a walk-off win or something in the postseason, the next week they lost by over 21 points, or they were 0-7 and had lost by over 21 points, something like that, right?
Yeah, and I think Schefter heard that from Austin, so who knows where this originated, but no, Austin posted that in our group chat.
All right, so citing the Minnesota Sports Section, which was citing Adam Schefter, which was citing Austin Bilal.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. What were you citing, Austin?
Someone on Twitter, so whoever you are on Twitter.
Just goes deeper.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, it's just a fact of life, and I was getting mad in our group chat because it's like there's people who say, momentum doesn't exist, and football isn't an emotional game. That's bull crap. So, teams who have these huge emotional wins and these walk-off wins, the next week it's a different scene, because that is kind of your Super Bowl. And that's the sign of a team that needs another year. And that goes back to your point that, yes, everything went the Vikings' way, but that doesn't hide the fact that this is year one of an offensive line rebuild. They've got a ton of cap space to play with and kind of fix some of the problems in the secondary. So I don't know.
All right. So you're moving forward. I like it. Let's move on to the optimistic. We're done talking about Philly. Onwards. Where do the Vikings go from here? So you kind of just mentioned a couple things, Austin. I want you to pitch to people in the chat right now and watching out there why they should be optimistic about this team moving forward. Our purveyor of positivity outside of Paul Allen. Of course, I know he has that title, but you're our resident positive guy here at Vikings territory. So what do people have to look forward to with this team? Why should they be optimistic that it gets better from here?
Okay, well, one, I'm going to drop a plug that Sean today on VT posted a really in-depth article on who the free agents are that the Vikings have, who they could re-sign, who they could extend, who could they take the 5th-year option on. So I would encourage you to read that. But if you look at that list and you look at kind of the roster as a whole, there aren't a lot of holes to fill. Let me think.
Well, we're gonna break down free agents and specific team needs in a second. But I guess your main point is. Sorry, I was leaving you.
There's 3 points. There's 3 points. Dalvin Cook's coming back healthy, and whoever he joins in the backfield already had a pretty good season. Number 2, you've got $64 million in cap space to play with. So last year you kind of made a splash with Reef and Remmers, and now you can kind of look at the free agent market and say, do we need a defensive end? Do we need another defensive tackle? Do we need another offensive lineman? You've got options there. And then the core of this roster, so the players that you've extended and the players that are going to be extended, 1, you can afford to do that, and 2, they're in Minnesota through 2022. So this team isn't going anywhere. And I would assume, like Sam said, that the quarterback situation is going to resolve itself. There's a lot of people in the chat. I think Don is saying not looking positive right now, but I don't know. I can't sit here and say, woe is me. I think there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I totally agree on that point. For this roster and $64 million in cap space, Rick Spielman.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, the amount of talent on this roster, and then to have a sizable chunk of salary cap money available, That's pretty good, guys.
Yeah.
So Sam, how about you, man? Pitch it to the people. Why should they? Well, outside of what you just said, is there any other reasons people should be positive?
I think and this is when we look at the draft. I remember looking ahead to the draft the other day and just saying, wow, this team has fewer holes it needs to fill via draft than in any recent time I can remember. That allows Rick Spielman to just focus purely on depth and best player available, which is something he's very good at. And I don't know. I think this is a team that is one of the more talented teams in the NFC. I think we saw that this year. Most of those players are coming back, and I think they may be a quarterback away from taking the next step and winning the NFC Championship next time. And there's options at quarterback. So they're not locked into anything. That's the great part. It's like, yeah, none of the quarterbacks are under contract, but they have a number of paths they could take with this that could be potentially fruitful.
So is the answer, because the next thing I wanted to ask you guys is, how do you keep this from happening again, right? Like, everything you guys just said is true. The Vikings have a lot of cap space. They have an incredible young core on defense that's going to continue to be great. But how do we keep that same core that we're talking about as being a positive to this team moving forward from completely crapping the bed like they just did in the spotlight of the biggest game of the season? You know what I mean? Like how do you take the next step and keep that from happening? Is there an easy answer to that? Is it coaching? Is it you just got to keep adding more players? Or I guess I'm just wondering how you overcome how players that you add to this team can overcome the franchise of being the Minnesota Vikings. I'm sorry, Austin. I'm being woe is me, but
to each their own, right? I mean,
okay. Can I hit that quick? You just keep getting there. That's what you do. Mike Zimmer said it the other day. He says, if we keep knocking on the door, one of these days we're going to knock that son of a bitch in. Okay? I'm quoting verbatim. I'm sorry. It's what Zimmer said on the radio. So really, we know how important playoff experience is to success in the playoffs. It's a very strong indicator of future success. This team and these players on this team didn't have a lot of it up until now. They had the one game in 2015, and they, some of them had some before that, depending on how long they've been around. It's just like you said, Brett. How do you keep it from happening again? You can't. There's no easy answer. You just keep getting there. And sometimes, listen, you play a game. Sometimes you take an L. Yes, it seems like it happens more often to the Vikings in these big spots. But I tell you how you don't beat it is by keeping asking the question, how can we keep this from happening? Oh, I hope this doesn't happen again. I don't know. I feel like that's more of a fan thing. If the players are thinking like that, that's a negative mindset to be in. You just keep getting there. You just keep knocking on the door. My fire alarm's going off. Austin.
Nice. That's our first, I think, like interruption during a roundtable like that.
No, remember when my mom...
Oh, no, yeah, your mom came in during an episode one time. That was fun. Sam, just give us a thumbs up when you get the fire alarm situation figured out. Austin, I agree with everything Sam just said. Looking back at this season, and I know I said we were looking forward, but I just want to ask you, where does this season rank for you now? I guess what I'm asking is, when all is said and done, are you going to look back on this season with a positive reflection on it? Is it gonna? Do you feel like this was still a great Viking season, or do you feel like just throw it in the trash can? They lost in the biggest game of the year. It's another huge loss. Or did you enjoy it? I guess, did you have fun this season?
Yeah, it was a fun season. I mean, you win 13 games, it's always going to be a lot of fun. Losing the playoffs sucks, but how many teams lose in the playoff each year? 11. 11 teams have to do this every single year, and only one does it. And the teams that don't make it, I mean, how do we look back on 2016? Are we depressed when we think back on it? Or do we go, man, it was a lot of fun to watch Sam Bradford? And you know me, I look for the positive. So I'm always going to look for things to enjoy from a season. But I don't think you can look back on 2017 and say, this was a disappointment. I think this was a building block season. I really do. I really think that you have this young core, and articles talked about it, how it's been 4 years under Zimmer, and every year they've either gotten better or gotten more chemistry or realized their potential as a unit. And I think that kind of came to fruition this year. And now it's a matter of, what kind of self-scouting can we do? Why did Doug Peterson kick our ass in the playoffs? And how can we improve that? So it's a disappointment, just like almost every season with the Vikings has been. But I think there's a lot of good to take from that.
I think when I look back on this season, I will probably remember the most fun I've had watching the Vikings ever since being a Vikings fan, potentially. I don't know. What about you, Sam? Do you have your fire alarm fixed?
No, the alarm I think has gone off.
Okay.
It was a roasting chicken situation that we have now resolved. I think that it's going to take a little time because we all have the nasty taste in our mouth still. And no, when we look back at this season, we're going to remember Case Keenum, story of the year. We're going to remember how Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray stepped up in Dalvin Cook's absence. We're going to remember that dominant defense for much of the year. And we're going to remember the miracle in Minneapolis. I mean, there's going to be so many good memories from this. And, with how sort of numbing that loss was, I think that hurt will fade with time, that it wasn't that back-breaking devastation. It was just a total butt-kicking by the other team. So I think we'll look back and remember this very fondly. And I agree with Austin. This has the potential to be a building block season. Right. You have to have that mindset.
Yep.
Because I know they have Tom Brady and everything, but I guarantee you on the rare occasions the New England Patriots don't win the Super Bowl, they don't go, man, I feel like that was our year. No, they say we'll be back next year. We'll win it again next year, and they usually do.
Yeah. All right, I'm sold. You guys got me.
Yeah.
All right, Austin, you can only fix one thing this offseason, man. Only one thing. So I want to know whether it's like addressing a particular position or selecting a particular coach, or maybe something schematically that you're changing to improve the team. You can only do one thing, and I'm curious as to what is the one thing you would do during this offseason to make the Vikings better?
It's a good question. I'm going to avoid the QB situation for now.
Okay, because we're going to talk about it later, so you won't be able to do it for very long.
Kind of to touch on the OC, the offensive coordinator stuff going out there, I think the Vikings are doing their due diligence, interviewing Darrell Bevell, interviewing Mike McCoy. But I think at the end of the day, it's got to be Stefanski, or I think that's how you say his name, who's going to get the job. I think it's just due diligence on their part, because he's been with I can't believe he's only, 38 years old? He's been with the team 35? He's been with the team since he's 21. So he's been with Bevel, he's been with Childress, he's been with Shermer, he's been with Turner. So I think that's a guy that you say he's got all the experience in the world, and he's going to keep whatever this offense system, scheme, plan that Shermer had in place going, and add his own wrinkles to it. So I think improving the offense by keeping that continuity is important.
Sam, so your one thing that your priority this offseason is hiring Stefanski to offensive coordinator?
I think the defense is close enough to top 5 great that the focus should be on the offense, whether that be Stefanski or shoring up the offensive line. I can only pick one, so I'm going to pick the guy who's calling the plays.
Okay, Sam, what about you?
Well, first of all, that was very, very well said. I agree that Stefanski is the best option at offensive coordinator that's out there right now. Low-key point, he is set to meet with Mike Zimmer at Zimmer's ranch. Okay, this is not an office interview. This is a ranch interview, and this is a very big deal, guys, because this is an intimate setting that not everybody gets invited to, the ranch. When you make it to the ranch, you already know you have the inside track on the job. I think that should not be overlooked. Now, I'm sorry, what was the question? I can do one thing, and I can do whatever I want?
Right, you can do your Rick Spielman, but you can only pick one thing to address this offseason. It can be a position. Okay. Explain. Because that's interesting to me.
I think, Austin and I had words about this offline earlier. He is not a fan of the idea. I think that Drew Brees is I think the Vikings are probably a quarterback away. I know that's the most important position in sports, so saying they're just a quarterback away is kind of a big deal. But I think Drew Brees is the best available option that's out there. And I think if they're able to sign him, which I don't think is even a remote chance, that they should. and this team would be pretty freaking scary.
All right, Austin, why do you hate that?
It's not the same. It's not the same situation. I don't really like Drew Brees, but
birthmark.
I don't like his birthmark.
Yeah,
it's distracting.
Birthmarkist.
Right.
It's not the same situation as Brett Favre in 2009. So I don't think it would play. I don't think it would play out the same way. I mean, this was a guy that was on his last legs and had a miracle season with the Vikings. Drew Brees has got some gas left in the tank. So
it's better than the Brett Favre situation? Sorry, I'm not understanding how it's...
No, it's better. I'm just trying to get to my point that I don't want to see the Vikings go down the same path of... See, and now I'm starting to pick apart my argument here. So
you're selling yourself on why the Vikings...
He's too honest.
Okay. Let me take a step back. So, as fans, right, we want the team to do whatever it takes to win a game, whatever it takes to... get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. But at the same time, we don't like change, and we like the team to do things the way they do. So me personally, I want to see what Spielman's done of drafting players, developing players, staying loyal to his players like Teddy. Clearly Sam wasn't that way. Clearly Keenum, that wasn't that way. And I don't want to see them go out and throw a bunch of money at Breeze for a couple years and chance that we don't make it or don't win the Super Bowl. So, I wonder if the team is confident enough in Teddy that they know more than we do, obviously, but that they're comfortable enough that they want to make him the starter and they think they can win a Super Bowl with this question, right? If you think you can win a Super Bowl with Teddy, what's the point going after Drew Brees?
So, Sam, tell me why you think this would work for the Vikings, because I guess I'm struggling to see how this is different from them trying to add a veteran quarterback at the end of their career in any other situation. I mean, are there even good examples throughout the NFL of a team bringing in a quarterback that's been on another franchise for 10, 15 years for their final few seasons and then going and winning the Super Bowl? Oh yeah.
They won in spite
of, you know what, man? Yeah, I know. And I had this argument with someone the other day. Peyton Manning was so awful that year. I mean,
he wasn't. You're right. He wasn't very good that year, but he was tremendous the 2 years prior, and they got to the Super Bowl that year, which I would just take now. Whatever you can say. Hey, they won it for this reason. They didn't win it for that reason. They won the Super Bowl. Brett Favre came to Minnesota, and Brett Favre gave me one of the most joyous seasons I've ever had as a Vikings fan in my life. Same with Randall Cunningham. Can't say the same about Jeff George, but listen, guys, I know. I think the ideal situation is to not have a retread and have to recycle every 2-3 years. But I think Drew Brees, like Austin said, has more in the tank than Brett Favre did when he came to Minnesota. And Drew Brees is a heck of a lot better player than a guy like Randall Cunningham ever was. So I think Brees would work anywhere. I don't think he's leaving New Orleans, so I think this is all a moot point.
Okay.
But if you can tell me I can do one thing, it's I'm going to bring in the best quarterback on the market and one of the best free agents in NFL history.
Kirk Cousins?
Now we're talking Kirk Cousins. This is a talker too.
Yeah, I see the chat is talking Brees or Cousins.
Oh, you're saying you like Cousins as a better quarterback?
If we're bringing in a quarterback that's going to cost us everything, I'd rather bring in Brees for sure.
Well, but with Cousins, you have the longevity.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, didn't he come in the same draft as Luck? I mean, he's not even 30 years old, right?
No, he's not. RG3. You're right. It was the Luck RG3. And the thing is, signing Kirk Cousins is a more financially restrictive move because the long term of the deal. I mean, you can sign Drew Brees for $32 million a season for 2 years. It's not going to hamper you cap-wise as long as they have it, which they do. It's when you get in those long-term deals, that's when it's really going to hamstring you potentially if you sign a quarterback. Yeah. But you got to overpay for quarterbacks. There's no way around it unless you sign Teddy Bridgewater, which I also think, Brett, is a good option.
We're going to talk about that. So,
okay.
All right. So let's talk about team needs, okay? Because I limited you guys to one thing right there because I wanted to see what was at the top of your list. But let's expand that a little bit and just kind of look at the team, where the team needs to go this offseason in order to get better. So I want to run through some free agents that the Vikings could potentially lose. I'm just going to run down the list here. So obviously we know Sam Bradford. And in that regard, we also have Case Keenum and Teddy Bridgewater. So basically no quarterbacks under contract for 2018. Although I'm not sure. Yeah, Sloter maybe. He's not on this list, so I guess he's under contract. We got Terrence Newman, Emmanuel Lamore, Tom Johnson, Joe Berger, Marcus Sherrills, Michael Floyd, Tremaine Brock, Jerick McKinnon, who sounds like he's probably going to be moving on, unfortunately, Bishop Sankey, Shamar Stephan, Kai Forbath, and then we have some restricted free agents here who are more likely to stay than those other guys I just mentioned. Jeremiah Searles, Cornelius Edison, Nick Easton, and Anthony Harris. So now that I ran through that list, I guess I just want to ask you guys, what are the team's biggest needs moving into this offseason, Austin?
I think you need a guard or a guy who can play both guard positions. I think you need another cornerback. I know Wayne's had a bad game, but he had a heck of a season in his third season. I think the team still trusts him.
Can we just talk about that for a second, man? Yeah, exactly. Okay. So if you want to sit there and talk about how we need to get rid of Wayne's now, then we also need to get rid of a lot of other people, because Wayne's had an absolutely amazing season. So it's a little unfair to put the entire loss on his shoulders. Sorry, that kind of pisses me off.
Yeah, Wayne's is in. Yeah, he's not that he's the second cornerback now. Is anybody saying that he shouldn't be?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I have not seen that.
I even have a buddy. Sorry, John, if you're watching, but he was texting me, there's no way Wayne should be back next, which I mean, he's not even a free agent or anything, so he's definitely going to be back next season.
They'll pick up his fifth-year option this year. Anyway, I think you need another cornerback, someone like a Mac Alexander, because Newman I don't think is going to come back. You need a guard, and I do think you need a defensive end, because by the end of the season, Griffin and Hunter were just washed, as I like to say. Washed up.
Yes.
Well, I think they each had 200 more snaps than any of the Eagles' defensive ends, and you could tell during the game, one group was rushing the passer, and the other one was not. So I don't know.
I feel like Griffin had such an overrated season, man. I don't know.
It just started so good, and then it just fell off a cliff.
Yeah, he hasn't. I feel like he hasn't been effective for half of the season.
I would agree with that.
I don't know.
He had a strip sack against the Saints.
He did. He did have that one play.
I mean, he was effective. He also had that foot injury, and as a defensive end,
I feel like he's the equivalent of defensive ends to like Adrian Peterson at running back.
One of the best of all time.
Yeah. No, like it's boom or bust with him, right?
Sure.
Like,
yeah, maybe.
Like he gets there.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know.
Well, he's really good against the run.
Austin, I think your point about the foot injury is highly underrated, because we don't know how bad it was, but I'm thinking it might be worse than we thought, because, like you said,
he pulled
so
out of the Pro
important.
Bowl, and who would pull out of a game like the Pro Bowl?
Can you believe it?
I don't know.
Hey, I tell you what, if it's in Hawaii, I'm probably going, but Orlando, hell no.
Dude.
You cannot pay me to go to that cesspool of human garbage.
Exactly. I might go to Philly before I go to Orlando.
Whoa!
Yeah. All right. So, sorry, Austin, were we still on you and your needs, or are we going to Sam? Sam.
Yeah, no. He
what are your needs?
I think the crazy thing when you look at this team, if you look at need for starters, you have one at quarterback, obviously, and then maybe right guard. It might be promoting Isadora from within, or you might want to go out and get somebody else. Other than that, for starters, you don't need anything. It's pretty wild. But like Austin said, depth along both lines, especially the interior of the offensive line, and depth at defensive end. They're going to have to figure out that rotation more. So I actually think we're going to see a lot more Tayshaun Bauer and Jaleel Johnson next season. And I agree with Austin on Terrence Newman. I mean, Austin just said everything perfectly. I think Newman's probably done. And if he's not done, it may be time to be done here.
What about tight end and skill position players? You think there's any need there?
Well, Michael Floyd's gone, God willing. So I think they could add they'll add depth at receiver. It might be promoting Rodney Adams or Stacey Coley.
A lot of people think Caleb Jones.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
He's
I
gonna
don't
be
know
that
much
guy.
about him. Tight end. Everybody wants to add the athletic tight end. They tried that last year. I don't believe he's with the organization anymore.
Michael
I don't know.
Pruitt.
Yeah, Pruitt into Bucky Hodges.
Oh yeah, shoot, my bad.
I don't know. I mean, they'll add a third tight end because it looks like Kyle Carter's gone now. But to go Kyle Rudolph into David Morgan, that's pretty good, guys.
Dude, someone just said in the chat, kick returner. It's actually Lucas said in the chat, kick returner. Can we get Cordero Patterson back next year? Can we just make that happen, please? That was a mistake. We should have kept him. We had the cap room. The special teams, I know we had a good special teams unit this year, but man, did we have one home run play on special teams this season?
Was there one Cheryl's punt return touchdown or no?
I don't think there was. I don't think there was a kick return or a punt return.
Yeah, it was a down year for sure.
He was a top 10, yards per return guy, but there were no explosive.
Sure.
There was the one that broke Morstead's ribs, but
yeah, that was fairly explosive.
I wouldn't mind maybe targeting a receiver or a running back who's also might turn into a kick return specialist, because I think that was a big aspect. I mean, I think it's important when you have a team built like ours to have those occasionally explosive special teams plays,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
especially when your offense is struggling to put points on the board. I don't know. I think you guys are seeing it clearly, man. Like, in my opinion, I think the primary focus should be the focus we talk about every year, Sam. It should be ham. It should be finding depth along the offensive line, and it should be finding depth. What do you call ham on the defensive side of the ball? Is that still ham, or is that like
It's bacon.
That's bacon on the other side of the ball? Okay, so we need some ham and bacon, because I agree, like that defensive line, it just wasn't getting consistent pressure late in the season. And I agree, like, it's hard, right? It's hard to get pressure on that run pass option defense when Foles is literally getting the ball out in a second and a half. But I don't think that was the only game we witnessed where the Vikings struggled to get pressure on a quarterback, consistent pressure. So I agree 100%. I think those two need to be at the top of the list this offseason: depth along the defensive line and depth along the offensive line. Any other positions you guys want to talk about before moving on to the next topic? No? Done with it? Okay. Yep. Offensive coordinator. We kind of talked about it before. Austin, are you on this? You're on the Stefanski board too?
Yep.
Or the Stefanski team?
I'm willing to say.
Is there any reason? I just want to ask, because I guess I may not be as informed as you two are on him. Is there any reason outside of the fact of his familiarity with the organization that you think he should be promoted to offensive coordinator? Is there anything that we can point to and say that he's done this before we give him this big role? Or
he's had multiple jobs within the organization. I know he's been more than just the quarterback's coach. He's done a number of jobs. He's stuck through 3 coaching regimes. And so that to me says something.
I guess my analogy is like, you could have a receptionist working at a Fortune 500 company for 20 years.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you're going to promote her to the CFO.
Or maybe you promote that receptionist to defensive coordinator, and then the receptionist is the defensive coordinator for a year and then gets hired by the Pittsburgh Steelers and is now one of the longest tenured head coaches in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, it's a philosophical thing. I see what you're saying. No, absolutely. At one point, nobody has any credentials. I think Stefanski has. Okay. What they say basically, by all accounts, he's very bright. He's well respected in the organization, and just from a philosophical standpoint, I like the idea of going for an up and comer and giving somebody new a chance that some about, rather than going for someone who is just fired and has been fired multiple times. I don't want Darrell Bevell. Maybe you guys do.
All right, so let's talk about some of these other options. Why don't you want Darrell Bevell, Sam?
I don't think he's a creative offensive mind or play caller. I think he's like Norv Turner in a way where he does well with his offense, but Mike Zimmer even voiced in his press conference when they asked what he's looking for in an offensive coordinator, he said not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, which is what Pat Shurmur did so well. So I think he's looking for more of that.
Okay. Austin, do you agree? No to Darrell Bevell?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'd rather see Stefanski, and I think back to your point, his biggest resume hit is that he was the tight ends coach. Was he the tight ends coach, then the quarterback's coach?
Yes.
When Shurmur got into town, yeah. So he dealt with getting Sam Bradford ready to play, and Sam Bradford didn't miss a step. He dealt with getting Case Keenum ready to play. People point to Shermer as being the quarterback whisperer, but there's a quarterback coach for a reason who's with these guys every single day, and he had Case Keenum and Sam Bradford ready to go within weeks and perform well. So I'd like to see a guy like that, like I said before, about continuity. So
okay, Austin, you can't hire Stefanski because I don't know, he doesn't want to be offensive coordinator for some reason. So you have to go outside of the organization. I'm going to give you 3 names who the Vikings are reportedly shown interest in, and you're going to pick one of them. Darrell Bevell, Ben McAdoo. You pick that person, please, and then Mike McCoy.
Ben McAdoo.
Oh no! Oh God, no. Okay, why?
Because I think so. He comes from the school of Mike McCarthy, and I think he's a better coordinator than Mike McCarthy. He actually has some kind of system and doesn't rely on his quarterback to make all the plays, Aaron Rodgers. But I think when McAdoo was just calling plays and wasn't a head coach, he was pretty good. He did a good job. The Giants ran a lot of slants, a lot of crossers, a lot of quick hitting plays, a quick hitting running game, and pretty West Coast offense that got running backs involved. So I think what he wants to do and what he tries to do would mesh well with the players. I just don't know enough about Mike McCoy, and I don't like Darrell Bevell, that I kind of have to go with Ben McAdoo, even though I'd have to look at him for 6 games.
So does it concern you at all that it kind of seems like McAdoo towards the end of his tenure in New York lost a lot of the players on that team, and that a lot of them seem to strongly dislike him?
No, because he wouldn't be a head coach here.
Yeah.
Well, just because you're not a head coach doesn't mean you're not interacting with these guys on a day-to-day basis.
But it's a completely different dynamic. I mean, you're not the leader of men in the locker room. You specifically deal with the offense and nobody else. And there's a completely different dynamic, I think, between being the head coach that everybody answers to and being the offensive coordinator that a small group of guys really deals with one-on-one.
Yep. It's like rebelling against your father or rebelling against your fun uncle. No one is going to rebel against their fun uncle. I think Michael Scott taught us that.
Does McAdoo look like a fun uncle?
He looks like an uncle.
He does.
He does look like an uncle. All right, Sam, I'm going to throw the same question at you out of those 3.
Yeah, I hate to be so agreeable, but I got to agree with Austin. I got to go McAdoo. Now,
I thought you
the guy
McAdoo.
Well, I don't like looking at him. He's actually frightening to look at.
Can we make like a contract requirement that he like cut his hair or something?
Well, I think that would be a good place to start.
If you cut your hair.
Absolutely. No children within X, amount of miles of the offensive meeting room, that sort of thing. It's just the guy he's a mess. I mean, you put him and Mark Davis side by side, and you can't believe people with money present themselves like this. But I just agree with Austin. Mike McCoy does absolutely nothing for me. The fact that he was able to do, once he didn't have Peyton Manning or Phillip Rivers, even when he did have Phillip Rivers, he wasn't able to do a whole lot with it. And then that last stint in Denver, just able to get absolutely nothing going. I know Trevor Siemian sucks, but you got to get a little more creative. In my opinion, that's your job as an offensive coordinator, is to be creative. That's what we saw out of Pat Shurmur, and that's what I want to see more of.
Some interesting conversation in the chat right now.
Who's on the top left?
I'm on the top left. Apparently, I sound like a psychiatrist, according to someone. Which, to be fair, all Vikings fans probably should have a psychiatrist. So
that's true. You are our psychiatrist.
A psychiatrist to both of you. And then Don says if McAdoo becomes our offensive coordinator, he'll become an Eagles fan. You know what? Whatever, Don.
Oh, okay. Austin just made one of those promises today. What was it? If Breeze becomes the Vikings quarterback,
I will root for the 49ers.
Oh, terrible.
Happily. I'll do it happily. I'll burn all of this.
Well, you will not. I'm calling your bluff.
Yeah, by the way, we haven't even mentioned your shirt. That's sad.
Yeah, this came in late.
You could probably start a little bonfire with that and Sean's Super Bowl 52 beanie that he was wearing the past few episodes.
My team got to the NFC Championship, and all I got was this shitty shirt. So, my friend.
But all right, let's end this episode on everyone's favorite topic and something we're going to talk about forever this offseason, nonstop. Quarterback, boys. What are we doing at quarterback? what decision are you making if you're in charge of this team? Who are you picking out of this group? Let's just remove the Breeze thing from the equation because we can all agree that we don't think that's very likely. So, Sam, this is the twist that we were talking about at the beginning, right? Is this it?
Well, first of all, you guys know I've been as big a fan of Case Keenum as probably anybody on here. I think what he did this year was sensational and made a lot of us feel very good. That being said, I think signing him to a long-term deal worth lots of money, $17, $18 million a year, probably is not wise. I think we may have seen the best of Case Keenum. We may have not. Could prove me wrong, but I don't feel comfortable with that thinking where his ceiling is. Now, if the team wants to see him for another year, I could see him franchising Case Keenum. I don't think that's a terrible idea as long as you have another plan, as long as you're drafting somebody, something like that. Not my preferred route. I think if you're the Vikings, the first thing I want you to do is look at what my brother calls, and Michael Scott calls, Mr. Outside Hire or Mrs. Outside Hire. True. I think you got to look at Kirk Cousins, and I think you got to. I believe Kirk Cousins is the real deal. A lot of people might not. The numbers are good, and the efficiency numbers are good, which I think is important. And I just think he's one of the better quarterbacks you're going to be able to add to this team at this stage. So I think you have to look at it. If they have to overpay for a little bit, I wouldn't be too mad about that because it is quarterback. My other option is signing Teddy Bridgewater to a 2 or 3 year deal and having a developmental prospect, whether you're drafting somebody or whether you are, whether that's Kyle Sloter, if you think Sloter is that point. The fact that you're going to be able to get Teddy for so cheap, I think is a distinct advantage. And if you think his knee is ready, I think out of Teddy Bridgewater, we should be able to see at least a similar level of play from what we saw from Case Keenum this season. I think Teddy's only chance to be a starter is probably in Minnesota. And I think if you can sign him for $5 to $6 million a year, that gives you a distinct advantage in roster building when you're able to spend that little at quarterback. So is that?
I got a couple questions.
Okay.
So simply, if you could sign Kirk Cousins to a long-term deal, you would do that over moving forward with Teddy Bridgewater?
Well, it's difficult because I don't know as much about Teddy Bridgewater as the team does. There are so many question marks with health and just general readiness. But I would have to say yes. With where this roster is, I think adding an above-average quarterback is just your best bet, and I don't see a reason not to do it.
Okay.
What else?
I forgot my other question, actually.
Because it's only because of the uncertainties around Teddy Bridgewater. I know we love him. We see the potential. Nationally, they don't love him like we do because he hasn't done anything.
So I my other question I just remembered was, you said, and I've heard other people say this, that you don't think Teddy Bridgewater will start somewhere else next year. Why? I don't understand where that's coming from. Because we as Vikings fans are much more up close and personal with him than anybody else in the NFL, and we value him more than others. We're not making that decision as much as I'd like to. But so, I'm saying we value him more than teams and team officials value him. But we don't know that because there could be other team officials that have spoken with the Vikings, and the Vikings say to them, hey, you know, we're not going to move forward with him, but this guy has a chance to be a starter. He has a chance to be really good. You know, I could see a number of teams wanting to start with Teddy over their current option. I could be wrong. Yeah, absolutely. I think it would take some serious balls to roll with Teddy Bridgewater with no other plan, if that makes sense. Okay, so, and that's my final question for you, is that you're fine moving forward with Teddy if someone just, like if you only have someone like Sloter behind him? You feel like those two are enough? Well, no, you're definitely going to want to sign a safety valve, a Case Keenum before the season, before Case Keenum was Case Keenum. So, yeah, I think that's your 3-quarterback room. You have your starter, your apparent starter in Teddy Bridgewater. You have your developmental prospect, Sloter or draft pick or whatever. And then you have your safety valve, your Brian Hoyer. Okay, I got you. Austin, what about you, man?
I said it in the chat today. I think that signing Teddy is, I don't know what kind of deal he would sign. It's probably the best option for the team. They know more than anybody what he's like. Zimmer wouldn't have said, you know, they conducted this long injury study on 24 athletes across all sports to see what his recovery would be like if they didn't have a lot invested in him. I don't think you sign Sloter. this offseason and pay him more than you pay most practice squad players if you're looking to draft a quarterback next year. I don't think the Vikings are looking to draft the backup or the guy of the future. I think Teddy's the guy. But then I do think you have to add some kind of insurance. But I also think my second option would be sign Kirk Cousins to a long deal. I think he'd be good in Minnesota. I really do. I think he'd be a good quarterback. You run some of that same play action that Case Keenum ran, and he'd probably make more of the throws. I just think he'd be a better quarterback. I don't know if he's worth $25 million a year, $27 million a year, but what quarterback outside of Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Cam Newton?
He ain't going to make 25 a year.
Every quarterback's going to make
will.
25 a year.
You know
what Stafford signed for?
And I know we've been saying that, but I feel, and we always point to like Glennon as an example, but I think
I'm pointing to Matt Stafford.
But he's not Matt Stafford.
No, but Matt Stafford's making 30 a year.
Oh, well, maybe
it's the market gets crazier and crazier every year.
But I just feel like a couple teams got burned by the QB market this past season, so I feel like it might level out a little bit. Maybe.
The players are going to go, hey, he's still got $25 million. Where's my $25 million? And Kirk Cousins has been labeled as, is he going to make the most money ever for what, 3 years now? Mm-hmm. I think they've been saying, what's Kirk Cousins going to sign for? He's going to be the highest paid player in football. So,
yeah, I just think the market goes up every year. I know teams always get burned on all free agents, Albert Hainsworth, whoever else. They don't learn. They just go and throw all this money around once free agency opens. It's what they do. They need to sell tickets and they need to win. I'd just like to point out, none of us mentioned Sam Bradford.
I was just going to ask. So, okay, Sam Bradford, he's gone.
In my opinion, I just can't trust with the injury situation. It's one too many times. Yeah, I say you let him walk.
Austin, team sleeves.
He's the best quarterback on the roster. I really think he is, and I think he could end up in Arizona. I would think he'd be a good fit in New York, but that offensive line's trash too. He'll end up somewhere. I just don't think it's going to be Minnesota, unless for some crazy reason, I don't think it would ever happen.
But why?
Discount.
Why, if he is the best quarterback on the roster, when I gave you the opportunity to make your decision, you didn't pick Sam Bradford?
Because he's the best pure talent on the roster, but he doesn't have the most. There's a lot of tread on those tires, and I don't think you're going to get as far with Sam Bradford as you would with Teddy Bridgewater if you believe he's healthy. And I believe he's healthy. He would have been cleared to go into a game if he wasn't healthy. Mm-hmm. And now he's got a full offseason of spring workouts, of OTAs, of training camp, of all this different stuff to get his legs back underneath him.
Sam, did you say anything about Sam Bradford, or is he?
No, I agree. It's just that I agree that he's the best pure talent quarterback wise on this roster, and I don't think it's even that close. But it's not like he's had one injury. He's just had a history of so many injuries. Bradford's probably going to cost some good chunk of change, and so I don't feel comfortable giving that out if I cannot trust that quarterback to be healthy Sunday, and I can't trust Sam Bradford to be healthy.
Okay, Keenum's walking. If you guys are making the decision, you're not going to franchise tag him. You don't think that's something they should do?
The Vikings never used the franchise tag, right? When's the last time they used it?
Klein Saucer.
Well, we haven't really been in a situation like this either, though, to be fair.
Yeah.
No, I think it's an average backup plan to just sort of kick the can through to next year. But, I mean, we all kind of agree on Keenum, right? We thought it was a tremendous year, but we don't feel comfortable giving him the money he's going to command on the open market.
I certainly don't blame him solely for the loss against Philly, because you definitely see that a lot out there right now too.
Silly. People were waiting for that one, by the way.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Wait, so Brett, you got to give us your quarterback plan.
It's pretty simple, man. I mean, I think this team would be making a humongous mistake if they let Teddy Bridgewater walk away. A humongous mistake. And that's me trying to remove away my fandom from Team Teddy as much as possible. I just think I think he offers upside that the other guys simply do not have. how young he is, how much potential he was showing, and then the big kicker, and you guys have mentioned it before, is signing Teddy and moving forward with Teddy is going to give you a ton of flexibility to do whatever you want with the rest of this roster. I would take Teddy over bringing a guy like Breeze or Cousins any day of the week, man.
So hold on now. I got to ask you, you think his upside is more than Kirk Cousins, for example?
Yeah.
So I just pull up Cousins' stats here. Career Kirk Cousins has 7.7 yards per attempt and 65.5% completion percentage. He has 3 seasons over 4,000 yards, 1 season of 4,900 yards, nearly 5,000 yards passing. You think for Teddy, that's a starting point.
Wait, are you mocking me?
Well, no. I'm just saying. I'm asking you about the statement that his upside is far more than any of these guys, including Cousins. Cousins had a 5,000-yard season. If Teddy Bridgewater's upside is far more than him, Teddy Bridgewater feasibly should have an opportunity to break the all-time single-season passing record.
No, because it's not all about the stats to me, man.
Right.
I mean, there's so many different variables that go into those numbers. The type of offense you're working with. You're never going to see those numbers from Teddy on the current iteration of this team. If he went to another team, maybe you would see him.
Well,
but
why
with
do you
Mike
say that?
Zimmer, because it's not the type of team the Vikings are.
Because that's interesting, because what I heard a lot this year was, Case is doing well, but a lot of part of his success is, he's in the perfect situation. Look at this. He's got 2 great receivers. He's got a Pro Bowl tight end. He's got an offensive line that's working for him. I guess what else do you need? The Redskins have Deshaun Jackson, but
Keenum was in a situation to be successful, but he wasn't in a situation that was going to put up #1 fantasy football QB numbers. Because that's just not the type of team the Vikings are under Mike Zimmer.
See, I think that's interesting. I think I disagree. I think that's because that's not the type of quarterback Case Keenum was. I think if Sam Bradford would have been healthy and played the entire season, we could have seen those fantasy numbers.
Bradford was there last year and we didn't see him.
Well, completely different offense. I mean, there was no offensive line. What are you going to do? I mean, they have to throw it 3 yards every game, every play.
We always have those excuses for our quarterbacks, and I use them all the time too. I'm not saying you're using a crutch or anything, but
I kind of am. No, I agree. It's not all about the stats. I just I would assume if you think Teddy Bridgewater's potential is so high, statistically, he would take a serious leap from what we've seen from him in the past. Yes.
Here's the big thing about Teddy. Okay.
You're avoiding the question.
Well, sorry. Okay, I won't. What's the question? Go ahead.
No. Statistically, you see him taking a significant statistical leap from what we've seen out of him in the past.
Yeah, I think he was in a prime position to do that this season.
Yeah, that's the bummer.
I think this year he puts up better numbers than Keenum in this offense.
You may be right.
I fully believe that. From what we were seeing in the preseason before his injury, I think he had definitely turned a page, and he looked phenomenal. I thought in the preseason. So I there's no reason for me to believe that he is not capable of putting up similar numbers to Case Keenum did this year, Sam Bradford did last year, or even maybe at some point getting to those types of Kirk Cousins numbers. Yeah. Here's the thing that sets Teddy apart from me, okay? Go back. Let's say we would have been in a close game, or let's just go back to the Saints game, right? Even though Keenum pulled it out at the last second, there is no other quarterback currently on this roster or a realistic option out there right now in free agency that I would rather have on this team than Teddy, because I feel like, and people are going to say it's cheesy or whatever, but I feel like he is an incredibly clutch player. And I feel like in a big moment, he's shown in the past that he can succeed and be the guy. So that is a big portion of why I want to move forward with Teddy, because I believe that, going back to the beginning of our conversation, the Vikings need to figure out how to get over that hump of the Vikings curse. And I believe that Teddy Bridgewater can be that guy, because I feel like he was meant for that moment. And I know that sounds crazy and like it's not factually based in anything. It's 100% emotional, but that's just the way I feel about what Teddy brings.
Well, I kind of agree with you that he does feel like a more clutch player, but I'm trying to think of an example. Why do we feel that way? Is it the Seattle game when he had the one nice drive to set up the field goal?
Well, he was clutch throughout his entire college career as well. But I don't know. I can't cite specific games during his NFL tenure. I mean, I don't know what too much time for Teddy was when PA said that, and Teddy came back at the last second and drove the team down the field. No, but I just feel like when he's put in big moments, he's always shown that he can be that guy. And I have an awful memory, so I can't cite specific examples for you there. But
no, it does feel that way to me too. I think that's one of the things I like about him.
Austin, what say you about any of that? Nothing?
I think Kirk Cousins is clutch.
Shut up. All right, whatever.
He is clutch.
No, he's not. All right,
Yes.
guys. Well, I don't know. Anything else before we wrap this thing up? Any last words as we wrap up this season of the VT Roundtable?
Go Knights, go! Go Knights, go!
Yes.
Go Knights, go.
As maybe people have seen, it's officially hockey season in my house. I am a Vegas native, and I am witnessing one of the greatest expansion team in the history of sports. The Vegas Golden Knights are like the #1 team in hockey right now. They're kind of trading places back and forth, but they are on an incredible run right now. I was trying to explain to someone today that I met that is also very excited and looking. They're already talking about the Stanley Cup. I was trying to explain to them that I'm a fan of the Golden Knights, which means they are definitely not going to win a Stanley Cup, that they're going to get to the Stanley Cup, and then they're going to blow it in some ridiculous fashion. So just prepare themselves for that. But yes, all right, guys. Well, Sam, do you have anything you want to say before we head out?
No, Austin just posted the "you like that" GIF, and I like that.
Where did he post that?
In Slack,
okay.
Kirk Cousins. Austin, I think Austin, since this morning, I mean, he may have gotten 20% more on board with Kirk Cousins. I don't know, but I like it.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, Austin tends, that's not surprising to me because Austin has flip-flopped on quarterback for this team so many times it makes me dizzy. So it's not surprising.
Yeah.
He'll probably want someone else tomorrow and someone else the day after that. So
Yep.
We'll see who they get.
Ride the wave.
We will see. All right, guys. Well, I said it early in the episode. This season has been incredible, not just because of the Vikings season, but this has been a lot of fun doing this show. I want to say thank you to everyone out there that is still in the chat, is watching right now, or anyone that has watched throughout this season. It was really fun doing these roundtables, man. I really enjoy these things. I enjoy getting together with you guys and talking about the Vikings. So we're going to take a little hiatus. I don't know exactly how long that's going to be, but we're going to be back eventually. We're just going to take a little break and probably kick things back off once the Vikings enter free agency and the draft and things like that. So really quick, YouTube, which I don't know if I can get in trouble for bad talking YouTube during a
They're
YouTube
listening.
video. I don't think
They're listening.
I don't know. Maybe they are. YouTube has this new policy now where apparently we're not going to be able to monetize our videos unless we have 1,000 subscribers or something like that. I don't know. I just saw it before we went live, so I need to dive into the details. All I'm saying is if you're not currently subscribing, please subscribe. And if you are currently subscribed, do us a favor and share the video and maybe ask your friends to subscribe, because if we do come back, or when we do come back, I'd like us to be able to continue to see a little bit from doing these videos. It'd be great if we could get to 1,000 subs sometime in the near future. So anyway, just like the video, share it with your friends. We'd really appreciate it. And that's going to do it, guys. Thank you, and we will see you guys later. Skol Vikings.
Bye, everybody. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.